Hello, my name is Anders, and in this video I'm going to give you 5 reasons for why I think that you should consider still in 2020 to fork out good money for the privilege of being in a real recording studio. Today I'm at Newtone studio in Oslo, and this facility is practically brand new. I really admire the guts of the people running this place. Such a great vibe here. And I'm here to start the process of recording my next album. We've just finished for the day. And yeah, had some good friends over, and I think we managed to lay down some really good tracks. So yeah, had a great time. First, a bit of history. Back in the days, which isn't really that long ago, if you wanted to record music of any kind really, you needed to go into a professional recording studio. And in the 80s and 90s, all the music were consumed on physical medium, like vinyls and later CDs. And the record companies made quite a bit of money from this business, and they in turn were able to pay the recording studios good money. So they could keep like lavish, big recording spaces and expensive gear collections. Home studios and project studios, as we know them today, is actually a fairly recent invention. And back in the 80s, as I said, music being consumed on physical formats, you didn't even really have a way to distribute your music to your potential listener, even if you could record it yourself. I mean, there was no way an independent musician could print CDs and ship them to outlets around the world. That's not really how it worked. Today, technology have changed everything. And a lot of the commercial music of our time is being made in smaller project studios and even sort of bedroom studios sometimes. And in certain genres, it is actually feasible for an independent musician to write, produce and record his or her own music, and then go on to promote it to potential fans through social media and distribute it digitally through the internet. And this is sort of the gospel that the music marketing experts preach. And yeah, in real life, the major labels still holds a lot of power, but it's another discussion, I guess. Back to the recording studio. In the last 10 years or so, technology have really revolutionized the way we record and produce music. And good gear is getting increasingly cheaper. You can now get digital emulations of analog gear for a fraction of the price. For example, compressors, equalizers, and even preamps. Because of this, there's no wonder why many artists and producers choose to record their music in smaller project studios. And when I say project studio, I mean like a smaller studio that is run either by a group of musicians to record their own music, or maybe by a producer that works in genres that don't really rely heavily on big bands and have no needs for big recording spaces. That's my definition anyway. A lot of today's music is actually being made in project studios like that. So yeah, there's no wonder why big, gorgeous recording studios with long histories are closing their doors all over the world. So yeah, as I said, I really respect the guys running this place for investing time and money in something like this in times like these. Another aspect is that not as much money is being made from selling music anymore. So it's getting increasingly harder for musicians, producers and record companies to justify the costs of renting big studios like this for an album production. With this being the present situation, the future might look a bit grim for the recording studios. But at least me personally, I'm a big fan of these old school proper recording studios. So therefore I'm going to give you 5 reasons for why you should at least consider booking time in a real recording studio for your next album if you're a musician or a producer. Reason number 1, you have a large group of musicians that need to play at the same time. If your production involves a large group of musicians, say an orchestra for example, that is when a space like this really shines. I mean, you can't really record an orchestra in a project studio, that's just how it is. Even if you're recording a smaller ensemble like a chamber group or a folk band, you'll still benefit of having a larger space. It'll give you more freedom when it comes to mic placement and positioning of the musicians. And in a bigger room, you also minimize the risk of having all sort of acoustic issues and stuff that you might run into in a smaller space. So yeah, for a large number of musicians, I really recommend looking into something like this. Reason number 2, you might want to take advantage of the studio's acoustic properties. Even if you're not recording a large group of musicians, you might still benefit from having a great sounding live room. It's been a common practice for a long time now to record acoustic instruments in a very dry, almost dead sounding studio environment, and then add the room sort of back in mixing using effects like reverb and delay. And these have been around for a long time, of course, but lately they have gotten a lot more sophisticated and very accessible and cheap as well. But there's still something to be said for how an instrument sounds in a great room like this. It'll definitely give the musician a lot more confidence in his or her playing when you can sort of feel that the room is responding to your instrument in a musical way. And also, some instruments are notoriously hard to record in smaller spaces, like drum kits, for example. So yeah, if you're recording any acoustic instrument really, it's worth looking into using a proper room like this. How's it going, James?
Very good, thanks. How are you?
Just recording a YouTube video.
Oh, hello, YouTube.
James Taylor!
It's James Taylor, by the way.
Like, click the button just up here. like only 40% of his subscribers subscribe to a video, so please do press the subscribe button.
Yeah, please. We need money. Or I need money, rather. Yeah. So I'm making a video about 5 reasons why I should book a real recording studio.
5 reasons. Well, I'll give you one of my good reasons.
Whatever.
Well, if you have a nice studio, you have an engineer, and it means you can 100% focus on the music.
For sure.
And everything's a little bit quicker. You can have them in the control room, and also the equipment as well. We've had access to some really good microphones today that, you know, mega expensive. So yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for dropping by.
See you later, YouTube.
Reason number 3, you might want to take advantage of the human resources in the studio. In a proper recording studio, you should expect to be working with a really experienced engineer that knows the particular studio, the live room, knows the mic collection, knows the gear, and he or she should also be very experienced in different styles and genres of music as well. These days, even though musicians and producers can do a lot of recording and mixing themselves, I mean, I do a lot of recording myself in my own project studio, but there is a limit to how much time I can spend developing my skills as a recording engineer, because I'm also a musician. And being an independent musician, I'm also my own booking agent and PR person, and the list goes on. So even though I can do a lot of work on my own, it's hard for me to gain the same level of expertise as someone who does this every day. It might also be an important factor when it comes to choosing which studio to use, because it's important that you vibe with the recording engineer and that you can sort of agree upon the same vision for the project. But in my experience, I find that almost all studio engineers tend to be great, easygoing people. Now, live engineers, that's a different story. Reason number 4, you might want to take advantage of the studio's gear and instrument collection. And this is becoming an increasingly important selling point for the studios. That's why you see on the websites they will always list the expensive gear and instruments that they have available. And these days, even though you can still get really good digital emulations of sort of vintage classic gear, there's still something to be said for being able to use the real thing. And a proper recording studio should be expected to have usually a great console, maybe like a knee or something, and probably some classic outboard gear like compressors, equalizers, and also a well-rounded mic cupboard, good instrument collection as well. You should expect like good drum kit, maybe vintage keyboard instruments like Hammond organs, Wurlitzer pianos, things like that. So that can be a good reason to go into studio as well, to be able to be really creative with all these tools that you can't really afford yourself. Finally, reason number 5, you might consider booking time in a real recording studio just to get inspired by the great environment. And I find that I especially prefer the studios that are situated a bit out of town, and maybe even provide accommodation for the musicians so that everyone can go out there and not be disturbed by other gigs or family obligations, and just be 100% focused on the music. And yeah, me personally, I'm a real big fan of the real recording studio, and I always find that I get so much more inspired whenever I'm in like a big studio like this. Musicians my generation and older, we've all grown up with pictures of the Beatles and Led Zeppelins and those classic musicians and band in great looking recording studio environments. I suppose that's in a way always been the part of the dream for all of us. So to be able to work in environments like this really gives me a boost anyway. So that's maybe the most important reason to be to be honest. Okay, so there you have it. That's my 5 reasons for why I think you should still consider using a real recording studio like this for your next production, if you're a musician or producer. Now, it's the end of a really long day, and I'm frankly exhausted, but I really wanted to make this video while I was in this great studio. So yeah, hope you found it useful. I hope I didn't rush through too many points, and that I managed to get my message across. Really looking forward to listen back to the tracks we laid down today. I think we came away with some really good sounding music and some hopefully nice looking videos as well. So yeah, looking forward to share all that stuff with you guys. As always, like and subscribe and do all that stuff, and I'll see you in the next video.